Welcome to our pod. And by that, I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are usually two best friends who do a deep dive into one book at a time. But today we are instead finishing up our conversation on Ryka Aoki's Light from Uncommon Stars.
Standalone Showdown Winner.
Standalone Showdown. And like, it's our last Standalone Showdown episode. It's very sad. I'm feeling like very bittersweet about this. I enjoyed this.
I just really liked this book. So.
I know, me too. So, I mean, sad face that we're done, but also I'm glad we found this and I'm glad we read it. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm so glad that we read this.
Me too. All good things, guys. But before we get into that, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So it's Love Month. So I read The Princess Trap by Talia Hibbert.
You were excited about this one.
Her books are like chips to me. I could just keep reading them and reading them. I really enjoy them. And this one wasn't as good as the Brown Sisters, but I still really liked it.
Oh,
and
good.
If you're into like the romantic prince, forbidden love type trope, or I shouldn't say forbidden love, romantic prince who is hard to pin down, then this is a story that you would enjoy. So
that's cute.
It's a good one. I had it on hold at the library forever. When it came in, I had the option to like place a pause on it, but I couldn't do it. I just had to read it immediately. And I did read it immediately, so I returned it early. But
well, I'm glad you read it early. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It's very good. So everybody check out Talia Hibbert. I have already added her Ravenswood series to my TBR, and I have those on hold at the library as well. So we'll see when those come in. But
Laura,
yeah, check out
resident...
all of Talia Hibbert's stuff.
Laura's not usually a romance person, guys, and she's really finding her
I just
love
like
in
this
her
author.
I like it. I'm into it. I'm so happy for you.
I haven't really read any romance besides this, so I just know that I like what she writes. So
next up,
I feel comfortable jumping into more of her books.
Right now, next up, you're going to be reading Danielle Steele novels, and only those. So
I doubt it, but I'm open to that being a possibility.
I like a good, I'm a fan of romance. I like a good romance. I just read.
There's that.
Yes, I do love Beach Read. No, but I also love like Nora Roberts. I read a lot of her books growing up, so I'm a huge fan. But I do have the Princess or the Prince Trap or whatever it's called, Princess Trap on my Kindle. So hopefully I will be able to turn to it because I knew you liked it so much. So really glad you're finding your inner romance. We are recording on Valentine's Day. Yep.
So for my watch for Love Day, I have been watching the wonderful hot mess that is Love is Blind season 2. What a disaster these people are. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I don't even have words for it's went more off the rails than the first season, I feel like, if that is possible.
Insane. I've never seen an episode of Love is Blind, guys.
Don't watch.
I won't. This is no offense to people who like Love is Blind. I'm terrible at watching reality television. So ask anyone. I'm really bad at it. So
my biggest critique, and I know everyone has this critique of this show, is that it's not really a Love is Blind because all the people are extremely attractive, even like the not so attractive one that they have per season. It's like, okay, he's still kind of hot. So I don't know. Like most of these people are like 9s or 10s, and the not attractive person that they get is an 8. I mean, they're all extremely attractive. Enough. So when they meet each other and they're like, I'm so proud of myself for being able to look past what they look like. And I just can't get over it because like, you're not. They're extremely attractive.
Well, we talk about like how you want to get like kind of people who aren't as pretty, but it also is hard because then I don't know. I think it's hard for people who.
The thing is, I feel like the people that they select for this show are, in a word, strange. So yeah, I don't know if you found people that were not conventionally like to like our media standards super attractive, if you found
Right.
people like that that had normal personalities, I don't think that they would want to match with these people in these pods and get engaged after knowing them for like 2 days. I just don't
Right.
see that happening.
I know.
So
It's like I would never do that, you know. So yeah,
I
don't
just
know.
don't think normal people.
Well,
I
except
shouldn't
we
say
do know
normal.
someone who signed up for Love is Blind and they did not get in. But
Thankfully, I
and
just
actually my roommate her sister knows someone from Love is Blind. So we do know,
interesting.
well, because it's out of Chicago. So like
Oh,
I have
this season is all people from Chicago. The
and
previous
like
one was
that's
Atlanta. So
yeah, so everyone's out of Chicago in this season. So like I have a higher threshold of seeing random people. And you know, pretty people are in Chicago. But yeah, I don't think I'm you know,
there's
someone
a lot of
who
pretty people in cities in general. I feel like,
yeah, that's
because
true.
I know like in my small town, it was like we have, the two popular girls that are very, very pretty. And then everybody makes a big deal over them. And then you go to like college town and it's like, oh, there's people from all over the state here. And it's like, oh, there's lots of pretty people here. What? So, but yeah, I I feel like this show though, I shouldn't say normal people, but I don't know a better way to describe the people that participate in reality TV dating shows that are successful, because there's so much drama and pitting people against each other that they do. And I find that to be strange that these people's personalities like lean towards that and want to be chaotic like that. So that's
Right.
why I'm saying it strange and
Yeah.
versus normal. I don't have better adjectives at the moment, so it's very poor wording on my part. But I just think that if they had people with less chaotic personalities on this show, that they probably would not agree to get engaged after 2 days without like knowing these people better.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I have nothing to
But
add to
yeah,
that, but I'm glad you
it's
enjoy
just
it.
it's a hot mess. I don't know why I'm like this with reality TV, where like those docu-series that Netflix has and Love is Blind. I don't really watch any of their other reality TV. Like I mostly watch, if it's a true story, it's one of their docu-series. But the reality TV, Love is Blind, I think is the only one I really watch that I can think of at the
Yeah.
top of my mind. But it's if it's like a a trash fire and you just can't look away situation, I probably will enjoy it. But I did try to watch Sexy Beasts and I could
You
not
did
get
try to
past
watch
like the
that. I knew
first 2
that.
minutes. I was like, no, done. Can't do it. I can't force myself to do this.
Yeah, I'm terrible at watching like reality TV. Like sometimes I'll try to start watching shows like Great British Bake Off, and I just like have a hard
Mhm.
time sticking with it. Like for some reason reality TV doesn't hook me as much as it hooks other people. So except
Agreed. I do watch the Holiday Nailed It because I love Nicole Byer,
yes.
but
I do watch Nailed It. Nailed It is probably the only exception I have where like I
it's just
do
because it's
consume all
Nicole
of them.
Byer. She's amazing.
Right. Well, and
So
their editing is so well done. And again, when I was mentally unhealthy earlier this year, I watched a lot of The Voice, but I literally didn't even watch the finals of The Voice. Like I got sick of it 3/4 of the way through. So I
probably
was
Blake
like,
Shelton just being too annoying.
I was just like, I'm over it. Like this was enjoyable to me up to a point, and now it's no longer
Right.
enjoyable. So I'm done.
I know a lot of people that get like so into The Bachelor and stuff like that. I don't know how they can get this into it. I
I
don't
don't know.
understand.
I've
Like
seen
I'll see their posts that they're like, "Yoo-hoo, gearing up for The Bachelor," and oh, okay. Glad you got all your snacks and stuff.
I can't even get into Euphoria, and that's just really well written bachelors. So
Oh, wow.
I'm joking. It's more than that, but it also is just not something I'm into right now. Well, that's good. I'm glad
Yeah.
you like are full of love this week.
Yeah, I didn't intend it, but yeah, it just happened that I had actual love choices for Love Day. So Hannah, what
Nice.
have you been reading and watching?
Well, in clear juxtaposition to that, mine is not filled with love. I read the book you gifted me over Christmas,
Oh,
Dear
yeah.
Martin by Nick Stone.
How was that?
I liked it a lot. I am
Mhm.
very glad these books are starting to exist more.
I saw that it was recently a banned book, so that
Yeah,
made
it's
me even more
recently.
curious about it.
It's about a kid who at the beginning of the novel has a run-in with the police, and then it kind of triggers this moment for him where he has to like look into his identity as a Black man
Mhm.
and how that affects his life overall. There are some overarching issues with his mom, with a girl he may be interested in versus another girl who he has dated for a long time. That's kind of ancillary to the entire text. And then there are some issues with race that come up. He is in a very prestigious school and deals with a lot of overt and covert racism. And then something happens to him and his friend, and he's kind of put into the public eye of like how people are looked at overall. I liked it. I thought like I read some criticisms that I agree with. And I had some misgivings myself. I enjoy these books, but something I noticed with both this book and The Hate You Give is there's kind of almost the main character is often falls into the trope of like the model minority, where it's like they both go to prestigious schools,
They're
they
at,
both
like,
get excellent
very good
grades.
schools. They're top students type situation.
He's like a student who's going to go to Yale, probably. Like you find out like if he gets into Yale during the course of the novel.
You're like, how about just a normal kid?
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's like, yes, he is from a low income home, but like it just kind of falls into this trap, I think, of like, and this happens with women and like people of color quite often, and especially Black people, where it's like, well, we're going to make sure that they're without repercussions so that you feel bad for them. And I do wish we would challenge that more and show that like it's one of those things where around the stuff of like the BLM movement getting more traction, it's like this resounding note of like guilty people deserve their lives too. Like, and like people who do bad things deserve justice just as much as the ones who are perfect, you know, models of society. So I have a lot of conflict with that because I've seen that in the two books I've read. And it makes me like recognize the fact that a lot of white people consume these books, and we often find the books that are most palatable to us. And I want us to check that. And I will be looking for books that challenge my thought process even more, because I am still unlearning a lot of my own stuff. And this book was very good and very emotional. I obviously cried during it because it is sad, but I want to make sure that I'm not just sitting in my own comfort zone, that I'm still trying to learn and expand.
I think that's great.
Understanding.
It's probably a situation where it's like these books have their place and deserve to be read and deserve to be consumed, but we need to also be aware of the things that you mentioned.
Yes, this is a first step, not the last step. Like this is not the bastion of where you need to be with literature. And you and I have learned a lot about that stuff, where I think like as our reading has expanded over the years, like we both recognize like, oh yes, you can't just read about Black trauma. You also should be reading about Black joy. You can't just be reading about this and not asking any questions. And like also a good point that I hadn't even noticed, and we have a podcast where we often talk about feminism, is someone pointed out a Black reader pointed this out, where she was like, the Black women in this novel are not great. Like, and the one white girl in this character kind of has some white savory vibes, and she's like perfect, and she like helps him through everything. And then his mom doesn't want him to date a white girl. And there's not a ton of nuance in that thought process, even though that is a very normal thought process in a lot of families, you know. And it always comes as like a contention and like a she's wrong. And like, while I do not think you should tell your children who to date, it's coming from somewhere. And I don't think that Nick Stone sat with that, which was a little strange coming from a female author. But that wasn't even something I picked up on. That was something I had to read someone else's review. And I was like, oh, she is right. There's one biracial girl who's kind of awful. And his mother is not, you don't see her very often. And whenever you see her, she's a little tone deaf to what he's going through. And that's a little strange.
So you bringing that up is something that I have wanted to mention for a while, but something I think people should do when they read books, especially books that are challenging like this, read the reviews on Goodreads or wherever you log your books if you do that, because it's important and interesting to get the feedback from other people and also to challenge your own viewpoints on things, because the way that I read something, somebody else is going to interpret differently. And it's, especially with books that are challenging like this, it's really good to get different perspectives. And Goodreads is actually a pretty decent place to find all these different perspectives, especially for very popular books. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth checking out the reviews.
I agree. I think that that's a very good point and a well
but sometimes take it with a
point.
grain of salt, because it also is a form of social media where people will just trash a book for no reason. So
Yeah,
keep that in mind as well.
One of my favorite books, Sky Following, of last year, where like a ton of white women came in and they were like, I just don't get it. And I'm like, okay, that's really like that was the review you needed to put out into the world.
And if you're looking for some hilarious reviews, check out Patrick Rothfuss and his review of children's books, especially Eloise.
I love that we ended on that very lighthearted note. That's amazing. And for watching, I again was home. I mean, not again, because it's coming out next week. But last weekend I went home for a day, and my sister and I rewatched the first Anne of Green Gables movie.
Fun.
And God, guys, it's a Canadian television film that came out in 1985, or no, was it 1985? No. Yeah, 1985. And like, it's my favorite Anne of Green Gables adaptation. I grew up with it. It's so good. The way like Gilbert Blythe was my perfect man when I was growing up as a child. And like, I just freaking forgot how funny the movie was. Like, my family watched it together and we were like laughing at all the hijinks Anne gets into. And it was also very funny because like my sister, Anne of Green Gables, is her favorite series of like all time. She can go on a rant about how like the third book, or the third movie of this Canadian television series, she's always like, that had nothing to do with the books, and the books were great on their own. So why did they change it? Like, it does definitely seem very weird, the shift they took it to. Gilbert has to go to World War II, which does not happen in the books. It's very strange. But she was also watching it. And she was like, I growing up, like want to be Anne Shirley so badly, but as an adult, I can accept that I am Marilla. And I was like, see, that's funny. Cause I watched this and I'm like, oh, I am 1,000% Anne Shirley. I have so much Anne Shirley like dramatics to me and like whimsy especially when I was growing up, that I'm like, nope, I was probably her growing up and I was not Marilla. And trust me, it's not any better being Anne through that. So, but
did you ever very much enjoyed Netflix, that. Anne of Green Gables series?
I honestly couldn't, because I love the film so much that I just knew that I would never watch it with like the perfect, like it's my pinnacle of one of my favorite movies of all time. Sure. That like I said, Gilbert Blythe was one of my perfect men. Like, he's so sweet throughout the entire series. He just loves her so much for no reason. I
honestly feel that way about certain books too, that are made into, like, if they're adapted into like a TV show or movie. Sometimes I just, especially if I've enjoyed the book, I'm like, I don't want to watch the movie. I don't want to ruin what I've kind of thought up in my head.
Right. And I appreciate what the TV shows did. I have friends, my friend Rima loves the TV show.
Yeah, my mom really liked that. So that's why I was kind of wondering, because I was like, I wonder if she's seen that. But no, that totally makes sense.
But the first two movies are the pinnacle of like perfection to me. They're so good. When Anne dyes her hair green, it's just so funny. She's so funny. Everyone should watch that. I know it's a 1985 movie and it's definitely not the brand of what our show usually delves into. But if you want to get a look
very
into
different from
Hannah's childhood. But that was my thing, and I keep watching Law and Order SVU as my comfort show of just putting it on, and Law and Order SVU goes off the rails by season 10, and each episode I'm just like, why am I still watching this? And then
I used to watch it a lot when I was in high school, and I don't think I have watched it very much at all since I was in college or beyond. So like 10 years. I have not watched that show.
The original Law and Order is pretty good. Like it's very good. Law and Order SVU was like, let's cram as much trauma into an episode that we possibly can. And we don't care how crazy it is. And it's all about like the show. And like, that's not what Law and Order is supposed to be about. And like watching it in 2022 is rough because every single episode of like, that person should go free. These cops are corrupt. Like they're doing so many things that are inappropriate in the name of like getting people to admit that they're bad guys. And there are like so many false arrests where they're telling them that they're horrible people and doing all these like tactics to get them to confess. And I'm just like, yeah, we just thought this was okay for many years. So it's interesting to watch in this day and age. I do not support it, but it is something I watch because I can turn it on and let my brain go flat for a while. And I need that right now. So that's the other thing I've been watching. And trust me, guys, I respect myself less than Laura watching Love is Blind. So
I think no one should watch Love is Blind. Like, I took that bullet for all of you listeners. If you want details on what happens in the season, I've only watched the first half. I will watch the second half because I enjoy torturing myself. If you want to know what happens, I will give you all the details so you don't have to torture yourself.
Check it on her Twitter account, MyPod, which gives the details of MePod. Okay, should we get into it?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. Do we want to start? Who do you want to start talking about?
Let's talk about Katrina.
Okay. I mean, we talk about Katrina. She's just a light of sunshine and joy.
I love Katrina. Katrina is my favorite character.
Of course. I don't think you could not have a soft spot for Katrina.
If people don't like Katrina, I don't know if they read the same book. They're thinking of another Katrina.
They are. Like, I don't think that there are any.
This is the most wholesome character. I love Katrina so much.
She just wants to exist. And like so much about this book, like one of the major themes, of course, is identity and how to be present in your own self. And like Katrina just wants that so much for her. You can't help but want it for her. And she's dealt with so much trauma and she deals with it in like this kind way where she just can't like she's so
kind and also extremely strong way that she deals with all of the literal garbage that people just continue to deal to her. And a weaker person could not do that. I don't react well to just simple minor inconveniences. So I don't know how Katrina was able to deal with all of these things that happened to her in this book. And I just think that her character journey throughout this book is just so beautiful and poetic throughout. I love what happens to this character as she grows.
I know. Well, and you're right. The character development of her is so amazing because we started off as like, she has dealt with so much trauma and she really does blame herself for it. Like she's internalized it all and been like,
she's very insecure at the beginning of this too. For obvious reasons.
Yes, I'm not saying like it's not deserved or it's like, and like even Shizuka at one point points out like this is just a teenage girl. Some of her issues are silly and teenager like, but that's so under the like layers and layers of real horrifying things that have happened to her. And the fact that like Katrina comes out of it and she just wants simple happiness and not even like
not anything extravagant by any means. It's not her saying that she wants millions of dollars and a mansion and fame and all. No, she just wants a simple life. She wants to be able to go places and not be called out for the way that she looks or where she goes to the bathroom or things that we all take for granted.
Yes. And it's like when she's playing and she says pure happiness is just a glass of tangerine juice. Like that is happiness to her. It's so simple. Or wearing short shorts. Like you really get all of Katrina's joys in the pages of this.
Oh yeah. She's definitely able to find joy in simple things.
Yeah. And one of my favorite, I'm going to pull out one of the tag quotes that I put in here. It's talking about why she loves to play. And she says, when I play, I feel like I can be normal. The music doesn't care who I am. My violin is just happy to be played. And it's just like,
Right.
yeah, she just wants something to be happy and have a place of joy for her. And that's so freaking amazing, because I feel like so many people lose what happiness means. And she doesn't, because she knows what being unhappy is. And that's pretty amazing. What do you feel about the way Katrina is dealt with, like how the book views the fact that, like, when she gets put out into the public media, they keep calling her like a transgender icon. And I think that, like, the author definitely shows us her view, and Shizuka, through Shizuka's eyes, where it's like, why aren't they talking about her music? Because, like, I think that goes hand in hand with Katrina. She just wants to exist. She doesn't want to be a hero. She just wants to be a person.
Did not enjoy the way that it was like called out at competitions or those showcases.
Right.
I did not enjoy that, but towards the end of, or it was the end of the book, when they said that she was a speaker and was trying to help others in the community, that I felt more comfortable with that. I mean, because it seemed like that was a choice that she had made to try and help the queer community. So that was fine by me. I was uncomfortable when she was on stage and the MC was calling her out like that. I didn't feel like that was appropriate.
No, I definitely agree. And I think it goes back to, like, Katrina just wants to exist. And yes, once she is in a more sound place, she wants to help people get to where she's at.
Right.
But that's supposed to be on her own timeline. It's not supposed to be dictated by the rules of the outside world. And I also
think it's a really big burden to put those kind of labels on people, you know?
Right.
So especially somebody who is so young,
right.
I feel like it's just a difficult thing to do. So when it was the end of the book and it was her growing as a person and deciding to use what she has experienced to help others, that felt right. But early on, it felt unnecessary, I guess.
Well,
not unnecessary in terms of the book, but unnecessary for the people to do that.
Well, in the way that people used her. And I think that that goes to a certain theme of things sometimes, where, like, when it comes to representation, and I think Katrina is a very effective way to use this, when it comes to representation, people often don't get a lot of opportunities. And so when you get one, it's kind of like what we were just talking about with Dear Justice, or Dear Martin, where this is a great book about police brutality. So, but, like, if, like, some people who are part of, like, the Black community may feel uncomfortable having criticism of it, because they're like, well, we're supposed to show support for our fellow people, but I have disagreements with how Black women were, you know, and it's almost like this: if you have too much criticism, then next time someone might be too scared to give people opportunities. And I think that's kind of where you're like, I am uncomfortable with people thrusting the, like, she's a transgender icon, and they're not allowing her to find her own voice in that. And it's making her like this movement when she didn't ask to be a part of that. And it's uncomfortable to force her into that position. And I think that that's well done with the music. And when she's doing her solo violin, where she, like, at one point she's like, oh my gosh, this makes me angry. And I'm like, you have every right to be angry. Like, you're just a teenage girl and you should get your own childhood. And the fact that you haven't been able to do that is so sad. And why we see her as this bastion of, like, goodness, and we only want good things for her. Okay. How do we feel about Shirley? I feel like Shirley's a good next one to go to.
Shirley, I also loved as a character. And I was a little confused with the character early on, but then that's cleared up later on in the book as to her origins. And once we figure out her origins, I guess this is more of a land discussion, so I'll say that for land, but I also just I loved Shirley as a character and felt that she, out of all of the children, was the one that was the most connected to the family and just wanted to try and help others as best as she could, which was something really beautiful that I feel like we don't see that a lot in characters where they are actively trying to serve and help others without wanting things in return. And that's what we get out of Shirley. And it's hard sometimes to see those type of characters face rejection and anger and not great situations as well. So yeah,
I agree. I do think like she kind of also goes into the main theme I saw in this book, which is like a fight for existence.
Yeah,
she just wants to exist. She's not asking for much. Like she's not asking for the family to love or like to support everything she does. She's not asking for Lan to say it. She's her favorite child. She just wants Lan to see her as her child.
As a child.
And say she exists. And it's that fight for existence and just the bare minimum that some people are unfortunately not given sometimes to no fault of their own. And watching like her move through this and figure out by the end how to get away. And like, she feels guilty every time she has to ask for her own existence. And I think that's also very real for a lot of people who feel guilty about asking people to just see them. And I really enjoyed Shirley. I thought she was beautiful. Like, like it's a huge, it's just such a huge, and it's so simple just to say like, I just need you to see me and not ask me to remove my identity from myself, because that's what Lan was asking her to do. And I think it's a very interesting way to touch on that theme through both Katrina and Shirley. And I loved them both so much. I loved how much, you're right, like Shirley just wants to help everyone else and she's such a caretaker. And then it hurts her almost to fight for the bare minimum. And she often says she's wrong. And like, oh my gosh, I said no to an order. I'm bad now. Like I am corrupt. I should destroy myself. And it's like, no, you shouldn't. Like, you just changed from what you were originally created to do. But isn't that any child?
You're adapting.
And you've existed for so long. It's not too much to ask for that. And I also love that, like, one of the things is Shizuka says, like, yeah, your family will likely never see you as a real child. And I understand that that's very sad. And I'm very sorry you have to go through that. But that's just going to be how it is. And so I very much enjoyed it. I thought it was amazing. You know, overall, Shirley is a great character. I love that when she wanted to help Katrina, Katrina was like, of course I've thought about this. It's such an easy, simple answer. But no, and like, keep talking to me. And that they're the two who get close. They become best friends through this. And it's like, this is amazing. Yeah. And I'm like, of course, but if you think about it, it's like, but of course these two are the ones who are like, nope, it's going to be her. She knows who I am and we get each other. So that's what it is. Like,
yeah, because they both have, you just said it very well, that they're both trying to be seen within their own families. And that, like Shizuka said, they're just not going to be seen, unfortunately. So they have that kind of shared experience, even though they're different experiences, it's still similar.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a little bit about, let's leave Shizuka and Lan for last, because I feel like they're a good ones to end off on. What do we feel about Lucy?
I was confused by this character a little bit, because I wasn't exactly at times I was like, okay, this character is problematic with the way that she was misgendering and just very flippant about it. And then at times I felt bad for her because of her own situation, dealing with a lot of sexism and probably abuse in her family. So I was conflicted with this character.
I agree. She was the one character who I was like, I kind of wonder what Aoki's thought process was for it with including her, because I was a little muddled with her a lot. Like, I think you're right. I think it is interesting to hear that, like, she is also someone who's looking for her identity, who was taught from a very young age that, like, it can't be the identity of her brothers and she is less than. And, like, that's a very interesting thing to read about.
It's definitely another example of, like you were saying, the woman trying to find her place within her family, but it didn't quite hit the same way as the other characters.
Well, maybe it's like, it kind of has to deal with intersectionality, where you, like, we as women can know the issues of being women, but we are also inherently two white cis women. So we have the capability of harming other people with our own blind spots. And so maybe that was Lucy's thing, to kind of show that, like, no person is perfect. If they've undergone hardships, they are still capable of doing bad. And that's, like, she ends up aligning herself with a demon. She ends up doing this so she can have the greatness that she missed out on. And it's showing, like, why it's so easy to go down that path if you're someone who's been harmed, because you just want it to be a little bit easier, and you're willing to harm others to get there. And there are people who do that quite often, who are silenced by their own like harm and trauma. And I did wonder if that was her purpose, but I don't think it was
a good take.
I like the read of her that way, because I think she has more of a purpose, but parts of it were a little bit lost in the weeds. Like, I think it was just through me being like, okay, what could be her purpose if we dig into this? Yes, that's showing it, but maybe she's just a fun little side note.
I mean, I could also see that. So
yeah, so I do wonder, I do like that reading of her. I feel very smart for making that reading.
Yeah, that was really good.
Sometimes I can pull my English major stuff out of my butt.
Good work.
Think of something on the spot. But what did we think about Marcus?
I did not enjoy that character, but I understand the trauma also.
I had a lot of struggles with Marcus because I wanted more of him.
Like, we didn't get a lot of any of the men in this book, so
I know.
I think we got the most with Tremont, but
I mean, Tremont is a nothing character. He's a demon. He's just
he just kind of pops up and then goes away, and is like,
he's a toad.
I'll get you.
Ribbit. But like, yeah, I felt Marcus, I was very interested when I started with him, because I thought it was interesting to read about someone who is struggling with the identity of this world. And like, he is technically the plight of the immigrant, where it's like,
I was going to say, I think there's a lot of immigrant undertones there,
right?
That we're supposed to be getting, only just an alien instead.
Well, and I understand that, and I appreciate that a lot. Like, I felt bad for Marcus. I just wish we had sat with him longer. Like, I felt like there was so much anger that, although
this is definitely a book that could have been longer and developed some of these characters a little more than it did.
I almost wish, like, this is so weird, but I wish Aoki would give us like a Marcus novel, because I feel like he was the most underdeveloped of everyone.
Sure.
And I would love to see more of that, because I do think it's interesting to see that, like, he is an immigrant narrative. He came to a world where he is technically smarter and more capable than everyone else around him. But due to their circumstances, he's not allowed to show that. He has to work in a donut shop.
How do you feel about his anger?
I thought it made sense, because he still bought into his home life. Like, it's almost like he was raised in like almost a militarized like land, and he still believed in the military. He still believed in his society, and his mom is the one who made him flee. So it made sense in this character for him to be like, no, we are great. There was nothing wrong with us. Why did we have to leave? And then he sees how he's being treated, and he understands the wrongness of it. And I do think that that leads to its own specific brand of bitterness. And it shows how that kind of anger can sit and fester and cause someone to do horrible things that they probably would have never done outside of this context.
Yeah, I guess I felt like, maybe this is just because we didn't get enough Marcus time, but I felt like the anger and the way that he reacted to situations was a little bit jarring because it seemed sudden, but that might just be because we haven't had enough time with his character that I felt that way.
I do wish we had more, because it was interesting that like I wasn't quite sure. Sometimes it's good to know the rules of what society they're coming from, because like Lan is obviously a bisexual being. She had a husband and she is very interested in Shizuka. And he was smart enough to understand a slur of, you know, a woman who likes other women, and he was very offended for her. And I wish we knew the rules of how their society felt about those things.
Yeah, that's true. Like if it was like what their norms were there.
Right. Well, and I wish we had known that, because like it would have, I got some like
works there.
Yeah. And I got some like misogynistic undertones from Marcus at times, because of the way he described the girl of the boy, like where she was so pretty and he just wanted her to like him.
Right.
And like the way he described her, like it felt very misogynistic. And I kept being like, okay, well, like it seems like Lan was well respected in her community. Is this a patriarchal society? What are the rules and the parameters of this, where it's normal Marcus is having these feelings? Because I got his frustration about being employed at a donut shop. I got his frustrations at people thinking him incompetent and thinking they could say anything to him when he was capable. But some of the other stuff, I was very confused by his reactions to.
Yeah, very fair. How did you feel about, was it Evan or Ethan? What did we decide? I don't remember. There were two of them.
There were two of them. And so it was very confusing, but I do think it was Evan. I have the book in front of me. Yep. Okay. Evan. I mean, Evan was terrible. I
thought, this is just my take, but I thought it was a good example of how even the people that you think are part of your community and are people that you can trust can't always be trusted, and are also bad. And unfortunately, that exists within all communities. You can't always lean on people that are the same as you or part of the same community as you, because they're just going to be bad people.
I agree. And I think that he also represented a lot of like internalized hatred, but like the kind that, again, because of the intersectional, like he is a man, he is queer, and he is Asian, but he has a lot of internalized hatred about those parts of himself. Like his friends openly mock Asian people and he joins in, and he probably has self-hatred that he doesn't stand up for himself. And it sounds like he had a lot of complicated feelings about his own queerness, because like he identifies as gay, but he wants to have sex with Katrina, and Katrina is a woman. So that is, you know, it could be a queer relationship, but it is not like two men in love, or two men in a sexual relationship. So I think that there's internalized trauma and lack of understanding, and he uses that own self-hatred to harm others. And I think he's a very good foil to Katrina's character, who has a lot of self-hatred, but still sees the harm around her and doesn't want to hurt anyone else, because she knows how bad she hurts.
Yeah, I think it's early on a really heartbreaking lesson for Katrina to have to interact with this person who she had a very positive experience with before the book began.
Well,
because it's an example of how like trauma isn't just a early on thing. I mean, traumatic things happen to people, unfortunately, in the ups and downs of life, and they were happening to Katrina throughout this book.
Well, and it also shows a danger of how you can be preyed upon if you are, if there has been harm done to you, because Katrina has been abused by her parents. She is dead named. She is not accepted by them. And she's desperate, which is what puts her into the path of Evan, where she feels so desperate. She's going to run to this boy who she doesn't really know, because he showed her any sort of kindness. And so she feels like she can latch on to that trust, and then it's betrayed. And then she leaves, and she immediately goes to someone who wants her soul so that she can suffer and like, yes, Shizuka ends up making a different choice, but it shows how easily a girl can get preyed upon when she's desperate and just needs to trust others. And that also shows like she ends up using it as a way to make herself more emboldened, but like even her being put into like child sex work, like she's being preyed upon in that way because she's desperate. And it's the way we allow children to be preyed upon because we don't give them the safety that they so rightfully deserve. And I thought that Evan was a really effective tool to show how that can happen to someone. And it was heartbreaking, like watching her be preyed upon by Evan, watching them sell her violin. Like that was heart wrenching. And the way she like felt like she had to buy them food. And Evan hit harder than a lot of the like, again, she is a child. I don't think it's appropriate for children to do sex work. I think that they should have other safety nets. But at least through the other sex work she was doing, she was choosing to do that, even if she cannot consent. Yeah, technically she can't consent. But like, but it was it was an active choice to say, I'm going to do this. But with Evan, he put her into a situation where she couldn't leave and she couldn't get away from him, and she had to accept his abuse because of the position he was in. And that happens to a lot of women who get into sex work if they don't consent to being in sex work. So I felt like that was a very dark way to start off a very beautiful novel. But it kind of
this book has so many dark things that happen. For it being a book that we both consider to be joyful overall, there are a lot of dark things that happen.
Right. I agree. So I really hated the Evan character, thought it was horrible, but he did exactly what he was supposed to do for us.
It's a terrible character, but also an important one.
It's really important because I think it's again easy. Like when we were growing up, like, again, trigger warnings, apologies, guys, but we were taught that like rape happens by strangers.
Sure.
And statistically, that is not true. And you end up getting preyed upon and harmed most by the people who are within your close circle. And I think that Evan was showing that like, I think it's so easy to say it's just some dark people in a corner, but no, the people who preyed on Katrina most were her family and friends she tried to reach out to. And then she meets Shizuka, who teaches her like, well, there's power in knowing your worth. And then Katrina, you know, when the like violinist guy leading the whole, you know, thing gropes her, she decides to take that power back and be like, well, if I choose to go to him, it's my choice. And I'm going to use that effectively. But that still is being preyed upon in a way. You know, she is still too young to consent. I do think that there are some problems with that. But I do think it's interesting. And I think it's important that Aoki purposely put in that Katrina is harmed by people she is close to before she gets her arc of putting herself in a stronger position later on.
Yeah, for sure.
Do we want to do Lan next?
Sure.
I feel lots of complicated feelings about Lan. What about you?
So I think you made a good point that we needed to know more about their society because it would help us understand Lan more.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times in this book, it's hard to understand Lan's emotions and motives, I guess, because of the way that her character is. But I think overall it's a likable character, and I sympathize with Lan, especially in the Shirley situation, because that to me made more sense, trying to separate herself from that situation with the way that Shirley was created and everything. That made a lot of sense to me as to why she would have removed herself emotionally from that. But there's so many other times that it comes off like Lan's emotions seem off to me.
Right.
And I found it a little bit confusing. How did you feel about her?
I agree. I do think the most interesting part about Lan was learning about her background with Shirley. Um, because it did kind of explain a lot more to it's. I recently saw a TikTok of a guy who's watching all of Doctor Who, and he said, like, the doctor seems to have been through a lot and he's not dealing with those emotions. And I was like, that sounds like Lan. Like,
Yeah.
Lan feels like she's been through a lot. And I could also see where, like, if we're taking the immigrant narrative from Marcus, Lan is the immigrant who was going on all cylinders to save her family. And she hasn't turned that switch off yet, which is why when she meets Shizuka, there's a lot of complicated feelings where she's like, well, my life was so much more important than your life. And we're doing exactly what we need to do to survive. And she hasn't stopped survival mode, even though they are now safe. And like, it takes the family asking her to slow down to really look at the trauma Lana suffered. And I think that that's another way people deal with trauma is they shut down everything and they pretend like nothing matters. And so she, you know, she talks about Shirley as two different people because she doesn't see this as like the baby she lost. And she doesn't recognize how complicated it is to map a baby you lost onto a computer program. She just hasn't dealt with the trauma of like the loss of her child.
Right.
And she can't remove that from Shirley. So she has to pretend she doesn't matter. But then Shizuka is like, no, there is trauma seeping through you. You didn't recreate a million Shirleys, even though you could have. You saw this one as a person and you just like never dealt with anything after that. And it's like she has been firing on all cylinders. That it is interesting that at the end of the book, she decides what she wants is to save Shizuka and remove herself from her family because she knows that they're safe now. And I think I haven't even really distilled this thought into anything more than what I just said recently as you were talking about her, where I'm like, oh, I think she is just a different type of trauma response where it's like I need to shut down all my emotions.
Stress and anxiety that she's dealt with for so long have made her numb, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that that's what makes the most sense with her. But I agree with you. I was very confused by her in the book a lot of the time. And the way she handled things, like I did think it was funny that it's like it's an alien, so she doesn't think music is important and they don't get what human food means. But I also think that that's like highly juxtaposed. And again, knowing the rules of their world would have helped a little bit more. It seems like they trust military, they trust science, and they're less effective with feelings. But we see through her aunt and through one of her sons that like feelings are very important to some people. They're just not like highly regarded in their society. And she needed to learn how to understand the feelings that are attached to food and music. And like, and she doesn't understand any emotions because like she even has to ask questions about like, why do people have so much hate? Because she's so numb. She hasn't dealt with anything. And it sounds like the end of her empire was coming because like people had all of these feelings coming to them because they realized their own mortality. And she just shut that down to protect herself and her family.
Agreed. How did you feel about Shizuka and Lan's relationship?
I love the idea of them.
I like the idea of them, but when it started out, I could call it a mile away. And I was like, this seems rather rushed.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it had a ton of legs all the time.
Yeah. And them calling out miscommunications with each other. It was like, yeah, obviously you guys barely communicate. Like,
but like they also have the best communications where like she sees stars in her eyes and she's like, you're not a real human, are you?
I mean, they pick up on different things about each other that other people don't see in them. So there's that. But at the same time, it just felt like the relationship was rushed. And a lot of times I just had a hard time being like, oh, do they really like have this deep connection? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel a lot of conflict with that. I feel like it was just, you're right. It was very rushed. It was just kind of understood that like they saw each other and had an immediate connection. And it's just like, again.
But would another one of Lan's species also have been able to be that perceptive? I don't know.
I know. I just felt like some of their stuff was the most random and the funniest to us when
Yeah.
we were like discussing the plot, where we were
Yeah.
like, their conversations come out of nowhere. They're talking about the deepest stuff ever, and
I
there's
just
no
think those
context
characters were
for it.
definitely the funniest.
Yeah, like they definitely had the most legs to them because they dealt with the most in their time, and they both come to each other imperfect people. But I felt like we didn't deal with their imperfections as much as we dealt with their miscommunications.
Right.
Like, I think it would have been more effective to have them sit with each other's imperfections where they talk about Lan's trauma, because then you and I would have understood it better. And we could have talked about like Shizuka and all she's done and coming to terms with that as she decides she's going to die. Because really, I did think it was a little bizarre that we never touched upon with Shizuka. Like, she sold the souls of 8 of her former students, and she kind of like, and then she decides to save Katrina, which I think is very worthy and it's amazing. But she never deals with the guilt of like, okay, so
selling those other people out.
8 people. Yeah. It kind of like
they were awful. It's okay.
Like, yeah, that's what it comes down again. Like earlier in the episode, I said like,
feel bad, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like guilty people deserve to live too. Like guilty people don't deserve to rot in hell for no reason.
Well, and the thing
like
was,
playing a violin.
I kind of got the impression that her other students were kind of tortured souls, if anything, not like necessarily like, oh, this one is an axe murderer. Like, well, maybe you would feel less bad about that, but like and
we kind of see that with some of the other ones, and especially with the
other girl that wants to be one of Tamiko,
who was like, I will sell my soul for greatness. And it's like, that seems like it's desperation more than it's like she sucks. Like, she seems like a good human being. Yeah, like it just seemed a little bit weird to me that like we didn't sit with some of that stuff. Yeah. And I get it, it was way too short, but I just felt like we learned more about like their meet cute and their early days of like feeding donuts to fish, which part of me wondered if those fish died immediately afterwards.
I'm sure.
I'm like, can you serve donuts to fish? It feels like
I don't think you're even supposed to give like bread and donuts to ducks. Even.
Yeah, you're not.
There's all sorts of like signs at parks that say like, do not feed bread to ducks.
Right, because like it messes with their system. So I was like, donuts are definitely going to mess with they mess with my system.
I mean, which that's a minor thing, but
I know
in terms of the book, but I agree that there is a lot of time spent on them just like kind of going to the park and feeding donuts, and it's like, maybe we should have done some more of these other things. But
yeah, and like ask each other questions, and like their fights seem so minuscule. Again, where we were so confused, we're like, Lana's like, I disagree with you selling souls to the devil and making them suffer in hell. And Shizuka's like, but you don't listen to me. And it's like, I'm sorry for not listening to you. And I'm like, but we didn't talk about the soul thing.
But we're just going to gloss over that? Okay.
Yeah. This feels really random that you're suddenly like, you know what? You're right. It's like if I wrecked your car because I was driving drunk and you were like, I can't believe you wrecked my car. And I was like, but you stubbed my toe last week. And you're like, fair point. We're not going to talk about the car anymore.
Yeah.
You didn't ask me how I was doing after I wrecked your car, which is really shitty as a friend. And you're like, of course, all is forgiven.
Makes sense.
No more questions. We're moving on.
Their miscommunications were odd.
Yeah, it felt, and I got the miscommunication with like the whole where I really did like the theory of like, you don't listen to me. I didn't like what brought that about. I felt like there were more effective ways to do you don't listen to me.
I think that I was more annoyed with the Shizuka side of the relationship, maybe I guess, than the Lan at times, because you could understand why Lan wouldn't see or maybe you don't, I don't know, maybe this is just me thinking that Lan would, with like the scrambler incident I'm thinking of, where Shizuka gets mad that she doesn't use that language scrambler.
And and it was like, how would
I didn't realize this was important. And I was kind of like, Shizuka, why would she know this? Like
I understand the underlying thing of what Shizuka is getting at, but it's almost like Shizuka is the kind of person who gets mad at the situation when she should be mad about what's under. Like, Shizuka is really mad that Lan doesn't respect Shizuka as a person
Mm-hmm.
and thinks she's important. But when she decides to pick that fight is at the worst opportune time. Like it's just
Right.
so poorly executed where it's like,
And it
how
might
would
just be
Lan
something
know?
where like Shizuka has an insecurity a little bit in their relationship because everyone sees Shizuka as so important in
Yeah.
every circle that she's in. So when Lan doesn't think that like something that she says is extremely secretive and significant, it comes off as like, are you kidding me? Everything about me is important. But
Maybe I read it more as like an insecurity where it's like, I can't believe you, like, I really like you. How could you not see me in the same light? Like, aren't I important too? And like, again, this is about like the importance of being. And I think Shizuka's like recognize my importance in being a human, like recognize me as important. But the way she did it was so bizarre. Like it's like, I totally get where it's like, hey, we were having a private conversation. We were like, you turned on this thing for us to be private and you didn't tell me you turned it off. That's kind of messed up. And I'm like, okay, well, like if you think you're having a private conversation, but the fact that she's like, you should know that violin is very important to that table over there. When it's like in normal situations, no one would care about. If you and I heard someone talking about
if we
violins,
went to Dunkin' Donuts randomly, like, and somebody was talking about violins, we would not think anything of it.
Right. And so it's just weird in that context where she's like, no, I'm definitely mad at you over this. And it's like, but why? Like, so yeah, I feel like their relationship was the sticking point that I just didn't buy as much as everything else.
But which is saying a lot because there's so many random parts to this book that all fit together. But I think Shizuka as a character, I enjoyed overall, especially her interactions with Katrina, because she was such a cheerleader's not the right word, I guess, but supporter of Katrina without any kind of motive to, well, I guess she has a motive at the beginning because she wants to sell her soul, but as she grows to know more about Katrina, she just wholeheartedly wants to support her and just wants her to be happy. The way that she supports her at the mall and like kind of pushes her to see her own self-worth, I thought was really, really great.
Yep. I love their relationship so much. I love that, like, I love how much Shizuka's just an ally.
Yeah.
She hears about hardships with Katrina and she immediately believes her. And she immediately is like, hey, I'm listening. You're overwhelmed. We're going to take a break. We're going to go to the food court. I'm going to sit with you. And like, she's definitely trying to make Katrina grow by saying like, see, there is kindness in the world, but it's through like effective means of like, protect yourself deeply because you need to, and learn who you can trust. Like, don't be desperate. Know your worth. And I'm going to make you great because you deserve greatness. And it's just like, this is beautiful. And I love all of you guys. I like her love of Astrid and how like Astrid is like her number one housekeeper. And she's just making her all this fruit that Shizuka's like, I don't really want to eat that, but I'm going to, because Astrid handed it to me. She's just rolling her eyes and she just wants half an Alaskan donut. I just love her so much with like outside of the issues we had with her and Lan. I really enjoy Shizuka, and it's hard for an author to make you love a character who has sold 8 souls to the devil or to hell.
But I think it's one of those situations where when we see her, it's like you don't often see characters, or not characters, but maybe people in real life that have a lot of influence and power that just do good things and stand up for people that don't have these things. So it's awesome to see that happen in a book.
And I also love how like her story, there's so much vulnerability to it, because it's like she gave up on this and had to, like, she didn't really walk into this hoping she would achieve what she achieved with like selling the souls of 9 people. But like she walked away from it because she was like, no, playing gave me a certain feeling and they gave me my hand back, but they didn't provide that feeling. And so this is worthless without it. And I think so many people would try to fight for that, like fight against it and be like, oh, it'll come to me sooner or later. But she was like, no, I'm not doing this. Like, if it's not what I wanted, I'm not going forward. And so then she does the soul search, like soul selling, because she needs music and she loves it so much. And I think that there's a desperation to her that I think a lot, like I do think the way Aoki describes like passion for your art is very interesting, because I don't think it's often explained this way as like something you really need to do and something that makes you feel seen. And like I just found that so enjoyable, and it made me understand Shizuka a lot more as we delve into what happened and why she did what she did. I just wish she had more regrets for selling the souls of 8 people and then being like, well, I found the last one I liked, so everyone else suck eggs.
Like, you guys deserve to go.
Yeah, because you guys were mildly rude. And she's a perfectionist. It took her, like, she wouldn't even listen to someone play. She was like, nope, she wants to be a copy of a copy. I want perfection. And I do think that was also a very weird characteristic of Shizuka. It's like, really? You can't, like,
I have parameters for who I select to sell.
I know, and that's the thing where he's like, just pick anyone. You're just selling. But she's like, no, because I have like the perfect thing. And it's like, okay, but if everyone sucked up to Katrina, why did you pick her when you kind of knew that she was, because like there was never a moment when she's like, like there was never a moment where she was sitting there going, I think Katrina's going to suck. Like, and I think it would have been better if we were in her mind a little bit more and got a little bit more of like, yeah, she seems perfect now, but wait, they always just want glory. They always just want this. That would have worked a little bit more.
Yeah, thinking that there was going to be some kind of change in her character.
Yeah, and there just wasn't, unfortunately. Yeah.
How did you feel about the way that Aoki wrote about music and also food?
I loved it so much. Like I said, I just really think Aoki is so effective at showing what passion looks like. Like, it's really hard to distill passion and feeling into a novel, but boy, did she do it. Like, when she's describing Katrina playing her music, and I think it's really effective the way she uses memories to evoke feeling. And like each time she or Shizuka plays really well, she doesn't try to explain the music or the notes as much, like she does during the solo, but every other time it just transports people back into an emotion. And I often think that's how people experience art, is like, we're like, well, we like it, or we love it, or we're so excited. And like, that's also with food. If you really like food, you get excited about it. And so instead of like, I think sometimes with the fact that she's describing how the food made people feel, it's a really effective way of making us understand what it tastes like. Because we're like, oh, I know what it's like to eat a donut and feel pure excitement over what this means, you know? But what did you feel?
So every person that we have talked to that has read this book has said, I'm hungry for donuts. But I think that just shows how effective Aoki is at writing about food, because every time donuts were mentioned, I don't know anyone so far that has read this that hasn't wanted a donut. But also when she wrote about noodles and
the noodles, I was like, I want these,
and the juice. Like, I wanted the breakfast that they had and everything. So I think she's just really good at writing about food in general, and making you feel like you're part of a setting. If that makes sense. And then the way that she wrote about music was so connected to the characters and also their growth, Katrina's growth, because the way that her music style changed, I just thought that was really, really great, because she started off just kind of learning out of a battered music book to going into something that she liked on YouTube, to finally going into something so complex and deep and emotional, and how she was just so connected to all of it, and her whole experience, her past and her present and her future were all connected through her music. And I thought that was just very, very well done.
I vehemently agree. I also want to bring up Sorry, what were you saying?
Just talking about how connected the music that Katrina played was.
Oh, it's about the way she expanded. I also really think it's such an effective tool to talk about how Katrina learned to play violin by ear and like managing to figure out workbooks to like figure that out and using YouTube, because I do think that there is a certain snobbery and most things that people have to learn. Like we see it in the book community all the time. It's like, oh, do you read fantasy? You should only read fantasy. Or like, are you like a learned reader? Because you should only be reading classics. And like, it's often talked about how publishing is built on romance genre, but everyone looks down on romance genre. Like, and they're like, oh, it's trash. And it's like, really? Because it's how most of the publishing industry maintains who they are as, you know, because women consume them and they love romance. And it's like this feeling that to be well learned, you have to learn a specific way. And like, I think we've had friends, like a specific friend I'm thinking of that you will probably remember, learned piano by ear. And if she listened to a song, she could play the music. But like when you told her she was an amazing piano player, she was like, no, because I don't know how to read the music. I just know how to do this. And it's like, no, but I feel like we try to make learning such a very specific way. And I loved that Katrina was someone who was not the typical person who didn't learn in a typical way. And people use that as a way to look down upon her. But she was really so great that other people saw her like Shizuka. And I really thought that that was amazing as well. And I was really impressed with that choice.
Sure. Yeah, but definitely.
Overall, we loved this book.
Yeah. The only thing I was going to ask, so the fish were mentioned a couple times. What was the whole point of the fish? Did I miss that?
I think I don't really know.
The fish are on the cover, and I wasn't sure what the point of the fish were, if it was just like Shizuka kind of liked them and they were decorative like most people have koi fish, or what the whole point of the fish was.
Oh, I think it may be, I don't have one off the top of my head. I could make up one.
You don't have to make it up. It's okay.
Yeah. I guess it's just
if you've listened to our podcast for these episodes, and you've read the book, or you just know what kind of symbolism koi fish are, like, email us, let us know.
Right. I will say that one of our listeners, one of our number one people we love to tweet with, he posted some responses to this, and I think we should read them on the air because it's always nice to get people. He said for his the 3 greatest strengths of the book, which is queerness everywhere, which loved that. Yep. Ryka Aoki is really good at creating characters that feel real, even really fantastic ones, which I agree with. I think every single character felt so real, even when they were plum colored aliens.
Like a main reason that people connect with the book is because the characters are so relatable.
Yeah, it's because like we talk about how deep this book is, but also how light it is, and I think it's just because humans are deep but light. Like,
right.
So, and then he said it also made him listen to violin music.
But you did that as well. So
I did. I also wanted to learn the violin when I was little, so I am biased. Just so you guys know, I had a violin from my great-great-grandfather in my possession for a little while, but we were too poor to afford violin lessons. So that is on Hannah's wish to be a violinist.
YouTube, Hannah.
This book did make me remember that about myself. It went back to my aunt because she actually owned the violin. But I think it was my great-great-grandfather carried it over with him to America. So cool story about a violin I used to have in my possession. But he did have some nitpicks. This kind of goes into something we said. It's thin on exposition. We did say we would have preferred to know the rules. Yeah, but there were several areas where he'd like to know more about. And he did bring this up, which we didn't discuss. There are violin terms of art that are never explained in this book.
I also didn't know what some of the different musical terms meant. Like, I play piano, so I knew some of them, but I mean, it's different when it's a violin, a totally different instrument, you know?
Right.
Especially like the building of it.
Terms. I rarely Google things. I'm usually just like, okay, in this world, this is broken and she needs it fixed.
I kind of just accepted it.
Yeah. And then he said the distinct storylines felt very far apart sometimes.
I can see that too.
I can see that too. I think, yes, I agree with everything you said. I think that thank you for, and he said, thanks for the homework. Thank you for reading it.
Yeah. Thanks for interacting us.
Yeah.
With us.
Yeah. We love reading this book. We love all the insights we've gotten. Ben from Literature and Lo-Fi will be giving us his reactions to the book next week for our other episode when we break down She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. It already has been recorded. So you guys should all listen to that because it was a very fun episode. And we're talking from the past and the future. Also, you guys should head on over to our Twitter after you listen to this episode because Laura and I are doing a special episode the first week in March. It is our pod's 1 year anniversary.
No, yay. We did it in a year.
We've been publishing episodes for an entire year. Laura, we haven't quit yet.
We're still in it.
This is successful. So we're having an episode that's just a celebration of a year together. We will be asking each other some questions that we're drafting up right now for each other. And we will also be taking listener questions for the next 2 weeks. If you guys have anything you're curious about asking, we ask for a little bit lighter on the Robert Jordan questions because we will be doing a Robert Jordan wrap up at the end of the Shaitan on the Wheel of Time series. So save those for a little bit later.
We'll go in depth on Robert Jordan later.
Yes. But if you guys have any questions for us, they can be silly. They can be deeper. What books we loved last year, what books we recommend for things. You know, if you want to get into the romance genre, we have recommendations for that. Or I do. Laura has Talia.
I have one.
So she'll give that to you right now. If you want to know what Nora Roberts books to read, I have a couple of my favorites there. If you want to know what we read for Black History Month, anything in between, or if you just want to know like things about why we decided to do this format of the podcast, etc., favorite colors, we are happy to answer them. So make sure you reach out to us.
My favorite color.
And then after that first week in March, we are getting back into Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson.
And Brando Sando.
Yep. Buckle up and start reading that book right now because it is chunky. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, especially after the standalone February, because it was awesome. And we should do it again next year.
We're going to be doing maybe some more
rating
fun things in the future. We'll get into that.
Yes. We'll get into that in March. We'll do in our question and answer episode. We'll discuss a little bit about the future of the pod. So everyone should tune in next week to see our collab with Literature and Lo-Fi, and follow us at our pod on all the social platforms. Bye.